Hello everybody and welcome to episode 9 of the League on Wheels podcast. My name's Andy Walker and I'm running solo today. Unfortunately Tom is not with us and he's absolutely gutted because our guest today he has got to know very well in the last few weeks and I think he wanted to get into him and get some good deep questions asked. So joining me today in the studio is Sheffield Eagles, Dave Butler. Dave, how are you?
Very good, thanks. Yeah, afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming along. It's been in the pipeline for a little while now. We've been looking to get you booked in. We've had a chat whilst you've been out visiting us, refereeing and doing everything else that you do. As well as your bits and bats that you do at Sheffield Eagles, you do have quite an impressive Rugby League CV.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I've been very fortunate to have worked in the game for most of my career, and when I wasn't working with Rugby League, I've been bouncing basketballs and involved in equestrian and things like that. But yeah, I've been back in Rugby League now full time for the last 4.5 years, and yeah, I absolutely love it. It's the sport's been so generous to me, and that's why I think I keep coming back with all these volunteer roles to give something back to the game.
I'm glad you're enjoying it. That's what we all do. We all enjoy it. Obviously, you just mentioned all kind of few different sports there. So what got into the Rugby League?
Well, I went to university, so I'm from Derby originally, and I played the other code growing up because there wasn't any Rugby League really. But I went to university in Hull, and obviously there's a little bit of Rugby League over there, and I got some friends that were involved in the game elsewhere, and first job after university was at Sheffield Eagles, and that's really where the story started. So always watched a little bit of Rugby League on the TV growing up. I can remember Challenge Cup semi-finals, Challenge Cup finals and things, but I only really sort of got into the blood when I was 22, 23, and it's taken hold.
So starting off with Sheffield Eagles, then what got you involved at Sheffield then back then?
Well, I needed a job, and they were looking for a community marketing manager at the time, and so this is sort of 2003, and I was fortunate enough to be offered the job, and then spent the next 4 or 5 seasons working at the club. I left as general manager in 2007 to go over to Doncaster Knights, to the rugby union club, for a year before I made my way back into the sport at the Rugby Football League. But it was a great grounding. No 2 days the same in any championship club. They certainly weren't then, and I bet they're not now. And I think I was quite fortunate not to be pigeonholed into a sort of niche role within a club. And when I left, I needed to do it for my own personal development, to move on and get the career moving forward a little bit. But the club always had a special place in my heart, and was the first result I always looked for on teletext sometimes, the BBC website in later days, on a Sunday afternoon. And I was touch judging in Championship a little bit later on. Used to enjoy going to Sheffield, obviously treated that as fairly as you would, and then obviously got the opportunity to get back involved with the foundation at the end of 2020, and it's sort of all back there again now, and feel like I'm giving back for that first opportunity.
So what brought you back in 2020?
Well, so a friend of mine, Adam Hughes, who's also one of our trustees at the Eagles Foundation, Adam was working for the RFL at the time, and he was leading the Sheffield City's legacy plan for the World Cup. So as you'll remember, we had England v Greece at Bramall Lane, and then we had the one group of the World Cup, Wheelchair World Cup games being played at the EIS, both of the semi-finals as well. So Adam was leading that, and he'd been in dialogue with the club about the relaunch of the foundation. So at the time, Sheffield Eagles were playing outside of the city while the new stadium was being built, and it was all sort of coming together. World Cup in the city, the club returning, foundation, the first foundation to have been brought in Rugby League all those years ago, and probably the first one to sort of get forgotten about. So there was this plan to rejuvenate the foundation, and a gentleman called Ian Annis, who was a legend of the game in Sheffield and a legend of sports development all over the country, was earmarked to be the new chairman of the foundation. And Ian sadly passed away earlier in the year and never got to take on the reins. And Adam rang me one day and he said, look, I'm just chewing the fat a little bit. We need somebody to take over this chair and drive it. Have you got anybody in mind? I said, I've got no idea. Let me have a think about it. So 3-4 days later, I rang him back, and Adam had also worked at the club after me. He'd come in on work experience when I was there, and he'd worked for the foundation and things. And I said to him, I've had a thought. And he said, okay. I said, I think it's me. And he went, right, okay. And I said, but on one condition. And what's that? I said, you've got to join me on the trustees as well, and we'll make it happen. And so we both did, and we've got 2 other great trustees as well, Michael Hackett and Rob Womack, and we've redriven the foundation back to some glory. So the day we took over, there was £1,200 in the bank. We were turning over £264 that financial year, and our most recent accounts show a turnover of about £320,000, and we've got staff again. We've got money in the bank, and we've got sustainability for the future. So I'm really proud of it. We've got some great staff that do the day-to-day work as well. But that's how I got back involved. So blame Adam for that one.
Blame Adam for bringing you back into the field. It sounds like everything's paid off though, the way the foundation's going in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm really proud of it, and like I said, we've got some great staff that are there driving it day to day. We've had some staff that have already moved on and gone on to bigger and better things, and helps us with some discrete projects, and moved away as consultants and things. But our objective was to capitalise on the World Cup legacy in the city, and really make sure that the games didn't come into Sheffield, were a flash in the pan, and then went away and left nothing. So obviously we're here today to talk about Wheelchair Rugby League. That's got to be one of the successes there. So we launched the new Sheffield Eagles wheelchair team at the England v Wales friendly in June of 2021. And later that year, obviously, the World Cup got moved into 2022, but we persevered and started in the leagues in 22, and where we are now, one of the largest clubs in the country, first team playing in Super League, a reserve grade team, and a group of juniors training every week as well. So direct link back to that World Cup games that were being played there. But we've got a women's team up and running. It's more a women's club because they run 2 teams. We've got Learning Disability Rugby League, Physical Disability Rugby League. All of the schools coaching is back up and where it should be. We run an initiative which is in partnership with Rugby League Cares and Movember to deliver mental health and mental fitness training to about 2,000 young people in the city every year as well. And there's all sorts of little things like social touch rugby on a Tuesday night, and we've got the Tag Rugby franchise as well for the city as well, which is generating a bit of money as well for us to invest in other things. So I'm absolutely blown away with it. I think the only joke we have sometimes is that it's a charity, so we've been really successful. But actually, it just costs us time as opposed to making money as individuals. But that's not why we're involved. And like I said, it's all about giving back to the game. But probably want to have a stab at my own business as well at some point and see how that might go. So
when you've got time.
When I've got time, yeah.
So is that where your involvement in Wheelchair Rugby League came in then, through Sheffield Eagles?
No, so I was involved right back to the 2013 World Cup. So when I worked for the RFL, Julia Lee, who's a great guest on all sorts of things, so definitely get her involved at some point. But Julia Lee asked me to get involved with the Festival of World Cups. So we had, alongside the wheelchair competition, we had the women, police, students and armed forces World Cups all taking place in the July before the men's tournament took place in the autumn period. So I was quite heavily involved in the organisation of the 2013 World Cup. That was down at Medway Park. We did the whole thing down there with 6 teams. I can tell you how many cat's eyes there are between where I live in Sheffield and Medway Park on the motorway, and I still don't need the sat nav if we go down there now, so I was down there pretty regularly. And there were some great people involved, a guy called Bob Diamond from the council and Lindsay Horton who really made things better. And I think what they had a vision that up to that point internationals have been played in sports halls, and we had a great on-field product, but we didn't necessarily have an off-field product. So they had this vision that we can bring lights in and we can put vinyl decals on the floor and give those clappy things to the crowd to make a noise with, and have an announcer that really add some razzmatazz to the game. And obviously down in Medway, the Medway Dragons, really successful rugby league club, and they'd been playing wheelchair rugby league for a long time, but it's not the most vibrant rugby league area of the country. And yet the locals there bought into the event because it was an event. And that was fantastic. So I remember sitting at the final, and watching everything unfold on that day and thinking that, there's something special about this sport. So I was involved the year after. We ran a 4 nations, England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland, and then we ran the first European Championships in 2015 that also involved France. So a little bit more hands-off at that point. And then I left employment in rugby league, so I sort of stepped away from it. But yeah, 2021, we launched the team at the club, but also that's when the referee call came back as well. So yeah, had on and off had a long involvement, but actually first involvement in wheelchair rugby league was way back in 2008, and Alan Carron, who's the current Wales head coach, ran a taster session for us in the Midlands at TCAT College in Telford. So my regional team at the RFL, all 16 of us, played wheelchair rugby league for an afternoon for a bit of a team building exercise, and my only memory of that day was just thinking how heavy the steering wheel was afterwards on the way home.
Sore shoulders.
Never done so much work on my arms. So yeah.
Workout, shoulder and tricep workout.
Exactly, yeah.
So you just mentioned there, obviously doing an event down at Medway, as lovely as it is down at Medway. What do you think now to our arenas, Leeds, for example?
Well, it's unbelievable, really. I mean, I was involved as a match official in the World Cup. And the World Cup started a bit slow for me. So the first games were down at the Copper Box, and there were 8 of us who were officials, and they would take 5 down to London, and the 3 that weren't selected would remain in Sheffield, and then obviously be deployed on the next games. So we've been in camp for a couple of days. They announced the team that was going down to London, and I wasn't in that. So I watched the opening ceremony on the TV in the bar in Sheffield, soft drinks only, obviously, with Grant, and I can't remember who else wasn't selected, and one of the coaches, Steve Abel. And it was great. And I remember thinking like, feel a little bit miffed that I'm missing out here and things. I'd refereed France v Wales the next day in Sheffield as lead referee, and on paper it was probably meant to be the second best game of the round. It turned out to be a world record score for France, unfortunately. But there were nearly 1,200 people there watching it, and hundreds of thousands of people watching on the BBC. And when I finished the game and sort of breathed a sigh of relief and eventually fired my phone up, I'd got hundreds of messages from all sorts of people who, because they were daytime games, and people who probably wouldn't normally be watching sport had flicked on to watch the game and gone, oh, hang on a minute, I recognise him. And we're messaging, I didn't know you did this and all of that. And it was fascinating. And then it picked up pace there. So, but anyway, to get to the point, I finally got to go to the Copper Box in round 3, and there were, 2,000-3,000 people there, and huge event. And then obviously we got to the final in Manchester with 4,500 people. And I walked into the arena on the Friday morning to have a little bit of a look round, and there's nobody in there, but all the lights were set, and it was like unbelievable. And I'd been to see the Prodigy there when I was a teenager, and it looked nothing like the venue then. But just the lights and the noise were the things I remember, like just having a really hot neck and hot elbows from the lights and things. But it was unbelievable. And then obviously a year later we did England v France at the Leeds Arena with a similar level of production. So it's the bar's just been raised, and some of us have said, did the bar get raised a little bit too high? What's it going to look like next? So But I think we're doing all right at the minute. So yeah, some fascinating progress from even where we were in 2013 with Bob and Lindsay being quite pioneering.
Just to touch back again, obviously, on that England-France final from a referee's point of view, it was a talking point with...
Yeah, it was. And, obviously there's things that have been said that won't get repeated here amongst the group. And, obviously there was disciplinary action taken and things like that. I struggled with it, actually, because you built up to what should be a fantastic occasion for the game, and as a referee, anybody who says referees don't care or referees are biased, they're all wrong. You go into that wanting to give your all for the occasion, and you're also thinking about what's your next game. A great performance means you might get another good gig. So that was sort of my thing, and the adrenaline is pumping and all of this sort of thing. And actually, it probably ruined what should have been the greatest night of my sporting career. In many ways, we'd had all these sort of jokes about we were going to go out when we got back to the apartments, and we'd just go straight to Old Trafford from the nightclub, for the next day. And in reality, I think some of us sat around in quite nice apartments, and some of us just sat around in my apartment, and nobody touched a drop of alcohol all night. So it's quite the anticlimax, really. But you park it and move on, and that's that. And justice has been done elsewhere away from us, and I think those that are selected for 2026, whatever nationality they are, will be reminded of how not to do it, and that's all that will probably be said, I think.
I don't think it tarnished it. It just put there were just a bit too much focus on it in the end, wasn't there? Really, because the product on the pitch were absolutely fantastic, and it just took a little bit of edge off it, I think.
I think so, and I think we live in a world where everything's immediate, and social media and GIFs and memes, are being pumped out left, right, and centre as well. So it probably suffered a little bit for that. But I think generally when you speak to people about the last World Cup final, the overriding memory is a superb game between two absolute titans. In the game, France gave their all, England gave their all. It was a tight margin for the win, and 4,500 people there, however many people watching on TV. That's really what it's remembered for. And in time, it might make a clip on Question of Sport or something like that, but the real memories are actually what happened from the players that night.
Absolutely. And I know you might have another little story to tell. You almost made it to France to referee.
I did, yeah. So last year, so Chris Haynes, who plays for Sheffield, was selected to play for England, and he was given the nod that he'd be playing against Spain. So a group of us said, we'll go and watch him. We all got cheap flights from Stansted, drove down en masse and things. And I'd said to Ollie Cruikshank, and so it's a little bit of a muddle list. So in my day job, I'd had to sort of devolve the match officials' appointments to Ollie Cruikshank, who does them in the UK, and Stefan Vincent, who does them in France, to get the officials appointed. But and then I'd said to them, but I'll probably be at the game, so if you want to use me, you can, but obviously I'm not influencing your decision, all of that. Stefan came back a few days later and said, well, if you come in, you might as well referee. So he wanted me to be defensive referee on France versus Ireland. So I packed my kit and all of this. Anyway, so we get down to Stansted, we get on the plane, and we get going, and I'm sat next to one of our players, and I'm really annoying on a plane. I get bored, and after a while I start saying things to her like, I've seen that cloud already, and just have a look out the window, see where we are. Anyway, she turned to me and she said, look, I have seen that bridge 3 or 4 times now. So we worked out we were going round in a circle, and then I do this thing where if I start feeling a bit unwell on a plane, I literally just send myself to sleep. So I've just sort of got like this. Anyway, she wakes me up. I've seen that bridge 6 times now. And so anyway, eventually the captain came on, said it's too windy to land in Nantes. We're returning to Stansted, seatbelts on, off we go in another direction. So we're like, oh, what we're going to do? I've got to be on the ground in 3 hours, no phone reception to ring up. And then a guy called Dean Buchan, who's the president of the Spanish Rugby League Association, he was also on the flight. So he's come down the plane to me. I've got the kit. I don't know what we've got the kit here. Like, we can't even get the kit to the team. So as soon as we landed in Stansted, I'm on the phone to Stefan to say, change of plan, you need a new referee. Then I'm on the phone to Martin Coyd saying, Spain haven't got a kit. I'm stood next to the boat with a kit. Get them one of your training kits and debrand it and all of this sort of thing. And obviously it all went on and it was all fun, but yeah, and then we all had to drive back from Stansted, thoroughly deflated that we'd not got there. Been up since 5 o'clock in the morning, and just a colossal waste of time really. But it's just a good story, really. So
it was made one for
yeah.
So you just touched a little bit then about your day job. Can you tell us what about your day job is?
Yes, I'm head of membership and competition for the International Rugby League. Been doing that since January. So we worked for European Rugby League for 4 years before that. So it's just a bit of progression and a realignment of how we employ people in the international game. So mainly, I've got three. Well, if I say three and then there's four, it's because I don't really think about it too much. But the membership element is working with the national federations to ensure that they're compliant with our membership policy, help them move through the membership policy and just provide that good level of service. The competition element is very much around the administration that goes into staging games, managing International Rugby League competitions and supporting some of the affiliate members with the staging of their events. And then I'm also leading on our technical education project, so the training of match officials and coaches throughout the world on our continuum of qualifications. So organisations like the RFL in England, the French, Australian and New Zealand equivalents, a lot of them have coaching qualifications on their government framework, but so many of the other members don't. So we've got our own suite of qualifications that is available for them. So we're just about to launch a new online platform that will help with that. So yes, I get quite involved in some of the international wheelchair games. Had a nice conversation with a chap the other day who's looking to establish wheelchair rugby league in a new country in Asia, actually 2 new countries in Asia. So there's some real crossover there between what's work and then what's actually, I really enjoy that. Yeah. This isn't work, I'm just being paid to have the conversation and things. Hopefully that will come off. But yeah, quite a lot of involvement in the decision to award Scotland and Ireland the final 2 berths at the next World Cup. I work with the wheelchair advisory group who ran that process earlier in the year, and it's just a nice crossover really sometimes between what's a great hobby and what pays the bills.
Living the dream.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it is like a 15-16 hour day long dream when you drift from thinking about something on the walk with the dog in the morning that might be related to the club, working a good solid day and often well into the evening on the international game, and then a few phone calls in the evening on the voluntary projects, and maybe refereeing a game at the weekend as well. So yeah, there isn't a lot of time for eating, sleeping and doing anything else that isn't rugby league, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
That sounds brilliant. I'll sign me up. And so you just touched then, obviously you just mentioned Scotland and Wales getting the last 2 spots.
Scotland and Ireland.
Sorry, yeah. Ireland, Wales are already there. We won't get on to anybody else that applied for it or why not, but what is it you saw? Can you tell us what you saw really then too?
So it was an application process which was based on a couple of factors. So one of them was how many games and what those games had looked like since the last World Cup. So both Ireland and Scotland have played consistently every year in both the Celtic Cup and then from Ireland's perspective, obviously that trip to France that I didn't get to earlier in the conversation. There was also a question around how they would prepare for the World Cup. So it's a little bit hypothetical, but obviously based on evidence and what they've done previously. We asked them a little bit about what they felt they needed to do to prepare. So there was a little bit of self-reflection and thinking about themselves in that. And then the final section of the application was around what the opportunity would be, so whether that's commercial, what the legacy would be. And I think what really stood out in particularly Ireland's application was they could evidence having been brought in late to the last World Cup because of Norway dropping out, but they were brought in late to the last World Cup. Their participation in the World Cup had stimulated growth in Ireland that they'd never had before. They tapped into that. On the back of that, they now field an international team which has at least 50% of players that have come from the island of Ireland, as opposed to UK expats, which was making up the majority of the team previously. They've got domestic competition running at provincial level underneath that national team, and all of it was evidence from that participation in the World Cup. And then looking forward, there was a clear plan for engaging the rest of the provinces, what a club competition would look like beneath that. They could show commercial activity as well. So it was really, really strong application. And Scotland's, I've had these conversations with them, so there's no great reveal here. Scotland's was slightly different and perhaps not always as clear in the direction, but nonetheless a really solid application. So, what I mean by a different direction. So Scotland doesn't have its own domestic competition at the minute. What it does have is Edinburgh Giants, which is, grown to be, a large club playing in the Super League, giving local Scottish people the opportunity to play at the highest level week in, week out. Ireland isn't doing that. They're doing it in a different way. So both models have got merit. And clearly both applications were, had merit because they were both accepted. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
You just mentioned a little bit a few minutes ago about the two Asian countries that were looking to get into wheelchair rugby league. Are they looking to set up domestically or?
Yeah, so they're quite small countries, but the thinking is that they don't have rugby league playing at all at the minute. No. So their thought of getting into the game is via the wheelchair game. And what they've got is quite a lot of other wheelchair or disability sports where players are happy to sort of play several sports and perhaps migrate between them, and wheelchair rugby league is the next opportunity for them. So it'll be interesting to see how it comes along, but it was a really fascinating hour actually the other morning talking through all of that. So we tend to sort of find, wheelchair rugby league is only in 10 ranked countries at the minute, and 9 of those are actively playing still, but nobody's ever sort of led with wheelchair rugby league yet, so it could be an interesting model.
Yeah, it seems to be, according to Tom as well, Tom Corderin a few weeks ago, it seems to be probably the quickest developing version of rugby league.
I would say so. The game's exploded here nationally, so participation is up across the country. If we go back to Sheffield, we've got around 30 players. They don't all come every week, but they all come most weeks, and we're fielding 2 sides and often 3 sides this year as well. We all know that it is one of the most inclusive team sports in the world, and we've got parents playing with kids, brothers and sisters. I think we've now got a boyfriend and girlfriend. We've got a husband and wife as well. But that sort of mix of disabled and non-disabled players playing together as well is unique for us, and a lot of people have been drawn to that. And so numbers are up. I still think there's some work that we can do to what I talk about, deepening the footprint as well as widening it. So I'd like to see us playing more games and having a slightly longer season and allowing people to really commit to playing our sport. But it is obvious that there's growth, and I think there's a lot of potential for it to grow outside of the traditional rugby league heartlands. So during the World Cup, there's a little story that Ipswich Town tweeted a good luck message to the England team going into that World Cup final. And part of me thinks, well, Ipswich Town's probably got a foundation which dwarfs anything in rugby league. If we went to them and said, you need 20 chairs and 20 people to play this game, and you could have your own league in Ipswich and then get the best 8 of them playing in a southern competition. We can join the dots up between Ipswich and Sheffield and London as a triangle pretty quickly, I think. So there's a lot to go at there. We don't just need to stick to the traditional rugby league clubs and heartlands.
How would you see growth? Obviously, going forward, more matches you said you'd love to see. So are we talking, obviously you're from an IRL point of view, but are we talking a bigger Super League, a different kind of championship competition, a third tier?
I think for domestic growth, I think, and this is obviously with my Sheffield hat on, I think we've got to play a few more games. This year we'll have played 9 competitive games in the league, and 8 competitive games in the league, and then we had a good Challenge Cup run that gave us 3 games. So I'd like to see us getting a little bit away from 11, nearer to 18 or so games. I think about 20% of the year, is what somebody would commit to, to play in the game. I'm fairly ambivalent to expansion in terms of numbers in leagues, because I'd rather see quality games rather than not. And from Sheffield's perspective, it's been a challenge going into Super League this year. We haven't won a game. Interesting stat though, in all the teams that have played Leeds, for example, only London has scored more points than we have against them, and we're second and third because we played them twice. Defensively we're a bit leaky, and that needs working on. But I'd rather have 8 or 7 or 8, however many teams it is, games that are really good, rather than having 20 teams in a league that's not so good. I think we can do really well at having localised leagues. So the Championship works really well because there's an East and a West division, but there's nothing stopping us having a North East division, a really North West division, a Midlands division, and having all these pockets that work through a network to get to Super League. And eventually maybe Super League is split North and South, and maybe there's a Super Duper League that that sits on top. But I think if we've got a pyramid that works and gives enough games, we don't need to have thousands of teams at each level. We can get that right. And it's challenging because there is a bit of migration of players between teams, and also when new teams appear, people have been travelling in some cases to go to a club, and then a team appears on their doorstep and it makes sense for them to go to it. So there is some of that migration. And I think last year we were unbeaten in Championship East, and it wasn't that much of a challenge. I don't think we would have been, this might be a bit controversial for some of my club mates, I don't think we would have been unbeaten in Championship West, yet we won the Championship final. Right, yeah. So, had we been playing over in the West, we might have had a more competitive season. This year, by all accounts, the East is the most competitive division. Well, you tell me different because you're in it, but...
I think there's a couple of clubs in East. There's Castleford and Bradford in East who has been by far the best 2. And then in the middle, Batley, York, Hull KR. Wakefield's had a bit of a rough cut of the season, having to rebuild and go where they were through the season. Looking at the West results, they do seem to be a lot closer. I saw Rochdale play a couple of weeks ago against Bradford in the semi-final, and it looks like over in West they're just doing things right. Rochdale just didn't really put a foot wrong in their game. Bradford went for them. Rochdale just made very little errors and went through the process. So on the West, there's a lot more established clubs. So we're still pretty new on the East. I know Castleford have come in as a new club. They're a new club. I know they've got a lot of experience playing there. They're a new club. Obviously, Butler are a new club. Wakefield have rebuilt. They're a new club. They're rejuvenated totally from scratch there. They start from scratch again. So more competitive than West? Maybe not. Not team to team. I wouldn't have said so. West have just been... They've had a longer time to develop, I think. I mean, give us time, give Batley time to develop, and I think we'll go strong. We finished the season fairly strong. We've the shape of Batley's changed from where we were at the beginning of the season towards end of the season. I think we'll have a really good season next season. Castleford, if they can keep their squad, they're fairly strong. Bradford strong side there with a lot of young players. They're building for the future, wherever that might be for them. So, yeah, I suppose it's still a development side really on the East.
Maybe. Rochdale's always our benchmark at Sheffield, so we played them in our very first game, got absolutely annihilated, and then played them twice in the league the year after, probably got handsomely beaten in both of them, and then 2023 it was a lot closer, and then finally we did a double over them in 2024. We've not had the opportunity to play them this year, which is a shame. But yeah, we sort of, same with North Wales Crusaders. Yeah, that was our first competitive game, and we went through getting nearer and nearer, and eventually beating them in the semi-final. And you can track your progress against those sorts of teams, because as you rightly say, the Rochdale team doesn't look too different every year. There's a few faces change, but it's mostly consistent, and same at Crusaders. So yeah,
I think Crusaders, they're always there or thereabouts. Same with Hereford.
Yeah.
Same. I think Rochdale has probably just done a lot of things right this season as well. Listening to Kieran Holt's remarks after their semi-final, they're here now to be taken seriously, and they think that they're at a point where they're going to come good.
Well, it's their first final in the Championship final next weekend. Obviously, Castleford's first final as well, and it's quite difficult to call it really, because I've not seen any of the West teams play this year. I've seen Castleford play earlier in the year as well, but that's quite an exciting game to sort of think about, and probably very difficult to call for a lot of people, because they won't really know a lot about either of the teams. So
I've seen Castleford a few times, and they do look impressive. They've got a few players who can score from anywhere. Like I said, with Rochdale, only seen them once this season, and they did just do everything right. They went with a game plan, executed it, and it went in their favour. I think it will be a good final, the Championship Grand Final.
I think anybody that's going to the Grand Final event needs to be there for both games.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Slightly biased, but Sheffield played in the Grand Final last year, and the game finished with a golden point penalty. It was an absolute humdinger of a game. We streamed the game ourselves, and it got some great viewing figures and things. And obviously the Super League guys came on afterwards and did what they did, but the game was the game wasn't anything like as tight as that game. Wasn't the Super League game was far more skillful and quicker and things. But there'll be some really great players on display in that Championship final, and I think you're missing out if you don't get there early.
Oh, absolutely.
On Sunday.
Absolutely, it will be a good match to watch. Two different teams, both unknown in a final situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Just going back on Sheffield then, first year in Super League. Obviously, you touched that you hadn't had a league win in there, but you must be quite happy just to get in there and give it a good go now.
Really happy. I mean, we started like house on fire. Really, we had the Challenge Cup early doors. We beat Warrington in that. I don't think anybody expected the score that we posted, and we're not the type of team that likes to run up big scores and rub people's faces in it, but occasionally I had just a slight aside. I had a conversation with somebody the other day and said, like, if we were all really good and took all our best players off in some of these big scoring situations, players like Jack Brown maybe might only play 20 minutes a game. Well, that's not fair on him. He wants to play over the course of the year. So we probably did a little bit more damage than we perhaps would have liked in that Warrington game. And then we played Edinburgh, which was a really, really good game. Both teams gave it their all. We had the upper hand over them on that day. And then Halifax came to town, and that was the end of it in the semi-finals. So, fantastic team, and gave us a bit of a schooling ourselves. And then we went into the league. I didn't get to many of the games because I was refereeing Super League, and I always say I'm unlikely to get picked for England next year. So I've got to give refereeing my focus, see if I can get to the World Cup again, because Tom doesn't want me. But Wigan, big score. We played Leeds fairly early on and got a bit of a thrashing there as well. But two games that went really well was the game against Hull. There was about 4 points in it. Both teams left points on the floor in terms of missed goals and and missed opportunities at tries. And then we had two quite fierce games actually with Edinburgh. One at home where I think the Eagles probably put a little bit too much pressure on themselves to try and win it, and it got a bit bad-tempered from both sides on the field as coaches and sort of leaders within the organisation. And we're all very chilled off it. And then obviously we played them again at Manchester in the first round of the central venue games, and I was coaching that day because Greg was unavailable, and that one sort of got away from us a little bit as well. But we're really happy. We've got a team of people who are committed. There's probably people who've played Super League this year that weren't expecting to. There's people that would have played Super League had they been available, and things that haven't as well. We just need to keep recruiting. We've got a couple of players that have come to us from other clubs, but they're actually in our catchment area going forward into next year. So we talk about sort of South Yorkshire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire as being our patch, and that's what we're going to focus on. And I think the model we had for Championship was we lost every game in 2022 in our first season there. We stuck with the same group who found themselves in 2023. We went unbeaten in 2024. So we've gone back to the bottom of that now. We've been lost every game in the league in 25. Hopefully we'll sort of find ourselves next year. I'm not going to be bold and say we'll go unbeaten in 2027, but I think I posted on LinkedIn the other week. We've earned the respect of teams on the field, and I think we've got a little bit of admiration for what we do off it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. How did it affect the playing staff? As you just said, they've gone unbeaten for one season. They have taken a massive step up into Super League. But how do the players get their head around what's been going on with them?
I genuinely think we've got a group that would rather lose a game by a few points than win a game by 80 points. Like, they want to be challenged, they want to be tested, and they want to push themselves to be the best that they can be. And you're not the best that you can be whacking somebody by 80 points, because you're just not getting anything out of it. So I think the players have been very good about it. Like I said, we had a couple of new players that joined and came from the locality that have sort of got into our way of thinking, and we've got a few secrets as well that I won't share, but we're quite relaxed. We don't, if you watch us play, we don't have this sort of strict warm-up routine and things, and we throw the ball around. I had to remind our team at Manchester, we're not Sheffield Eagles that go through the middle of teams. We're Sheffield Eagles that go around people, and we scored 2 tries on the back of that, so I'll chalk that up as a coaching win. But we're known for moving the ball around. People don't sit in the same position, and we like people to sort of take control, so make things happen. So I think people still have the opportunity to do that, but there's some realism. When you're playing, I think after the Halifax semi-final, there was a bit of chat in the group chat afterwards, and it was sort of summarised. Like, you've got a guy who's arguably the best player in the world, Jack Brown. You've got a guy who is the best player in the world because he's the Golden Boot, Rob Hawkins. You've got Wayne Boardman, who's England Heritage Player #1, and a ton of other talent around them. Of course they're going to win. We're not daft, and there's some real nice responses to that. But I think aside to Super League, when you look elsewhere in the club, our reserve grade has done that. We've had the opportunity to field a third team a couple of times this year as well, which has given people a bit of a lift. And we've got some players that are probably knocking on the door of a first team appearance who can't get in because just because there's people in there that are performing so well, but maybe might get in. If we had a second club in the city playing in Super League, that's not a thing. But they're just perhaps a little bit in what you might term dead men's shoes in some ways. But I suppose the argument there is, well, give them a go and move somebody else out. But that's why I want more games. We've got a bit more flexibility to do that.
Yeah, it gives your coaches a headache when you've got all that kind of. You should have got a lot of depth. The depth is fantastic there.
Yeah, but it's quite interesting when we first year, spoke to a lot of people, because I was a little bit concerned. We've set up this club. We're using the Eagles badge. We're using all all the gear and everything like that, and we're not doing very well. You know, is this tar in the image of what's quite a well-established and proud rugby league club in general. And I spoke to a couple of the directors and a couple of the full-time staff who all just looked at me as if to say, no, it's brilliant what you're doing, carry on. And we've always had that backing, and so yeah, losing a few games this year doesn't worry me. There's loads of other wins that we'll take. We can find a positive in anything.
We find a positive. Absolutely, you have to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Obviously, apart from a Super League win, or at least a grand final, what's the next steps for Sheffield?
Like I said, I think a little bit of recruitment, just to sort of what we lack is so you'll be aware in the Super League that there's 3 categories of player. There's able-bodied player, disabled player, and then disabled performance impaired players. We probably lack a little bit of depth in our DPI players. So we've got several players, but there's probably not as much competition for places as we might like, and I think that would help to push things on. We're that will help sort of maintain standards. I think the other thing is it's probably some players have talked about their own sort of strength and conditioning and how they get fitter. What are the things that they need to do to be able to move that chair quicker, move it more agilely. And then also there's and this is an equestrian reference. So in the equestrian world, they talk about horsepower. So if you're a top dressage rider, your horse is probably costing you £250,000, and that £250,000 is obviously better spent than 20 grand on a cheap horse. And it's no different to chairs. Some of our guys so Chris Haynes, who's playing for who's got his England cap, is still playing in a Roma club chair. If we can put Chris in a bespoke made carbon fibre all singing or dancing Lamborghini, he's going to go better because it's going to be lighter and it's going to be more suited to him. So probably need to start thinking a little bit about our horsepower and what the tools that people have got to use. But as a charity, we can't go buying chairs for individuals, so they need to take a little bit of responsibility for that as well.
Yeah, start looking into the grant section and such.
And they're not cheap, as we know. So
they are not cheap.
Is this the commercial moment? Do I put a picture?
I'm going to say we could do a nice advert there for some kind of special deal on.
Me on,
Yeah.
Call every club on.
Call every club on.
Everyone's looking for it.
Everybody be in touch with everybody.
Yeah.
Just touching then, it's something I found interesting speaking to a lot of people from different clubs. You just touched then on conditioning.
Yeah.
What does the conditioning look like? Do you do any conditioning? We spoke to Tom Halliwell right at the beginning, and Leeds players are left to do their own conditioning away from training.
Yeah.
Halifax, Jack Brown were telling us that they get absolutely beasted for the first 15-20 minutes, and then they go into their drills, which I think is a really good way of doing it.
Yeah.
So I've come from like a conditioning kind of point of view as well, like background. So how do you do yours there?
Well, we definitely don't have a structure.
Right.
I don't think Greg would mind me saying that. Sometimes it depends who's taking training and the mood that they've arrived at training in. So there's definitely days where Greg's texted me in the day and said, "Oh mate, I can't get there till whatever time. Can you kick us off?" And I've had a horrible day. And my favourite drill is we've got a load of orange lines in our gym where we train, and out and back, up and down the court and things. But no, we tend to do a little bit at the start, and there's the science of if you can do that while you're fatigued, then you can start to sort of train under fatigue and things like that. But it's something we've got to give a lot more thought to. The science is simple, isn't it? If you're lighter to a degree, you're going to go faster. Obviously, if you're too light, you've got no substance to you and you might make contact. And if you're stronger and there's less of you to push, then naturally you'll go faster as well. But there are the other, the aspects to that. So it's on my list of things to do, is to look for a little bit of support with that. We're quite blessed that the GB wheelchair basketball team train in Sheffield, and some of the staff are local. So I need to tap into them and sort of see what they've got there. But yeah, I think I think I always notice, if I miss training for a couple of weeks, it's always that little bit heavier. And probably playing a wheelchair sport is a little bit like swimming. The only way you can really get better at it is by doing it. Rock climbing's the same, isn't it? They say that. So, yeah, probably just need to book the training facility for 7 days a week and go at it that way. But yeah, that's on the list. More to do, but I haven't got any insight on S&C. I mean, look at me.
Well, look at me. I do have actually qualifications in that kind of direction. Not looking at me at the minute like I was always a strength athlete rather than a fitness athlete. We'll go down that route. So it's been decided at Butler that I'll be doing the pre-season fitness. So they're going to regret having me do that, I tell you, once we get going on that side. Right then, just before we start winding up, we've already mentioned that Castleford and Rochdale are going to go head-to-head this weekend. Are you at the grand final? Are you in a professional capacity this weekend?
Well, it's currently Monday night. I don't know when this goes out, but if it goes out on Friday, at this point, I don't know. Right. So we tend to get our match officials appointments on Tuesday or Wednesday. So I don't know. So I'm like this at this point. I've missed out on refereeing at a grand final for the last 2 years. I was in goal judge for the last 2 years. So I'm hoping. It's been a good season. I've managed to get plenty of games in. I don't think I've made too many errors, but some of the colleagues are really flying. There's been some strong competition for in the match officials group. Last year Matt Ball wasn't about as much. Matt's a great referee, so there was sort of a bit of at times a lack of competition because he wasn't about and things. But we've got some great people coming through. So whoever gets the final, will do a great job. And what you find is there's a bit of competition in the group. So sometimes I watch all the games. I sit on huddle and watch everything because I like to be prepared. But I'm also sort of helping Ollie and Matt in terms of helping to develop everybody else. So I do like to watch things. And sometimes you think, no, I wouldn't have done that. And you sort of log that as a positive for you. And then there's other times where you watch something and go, that's really good. I wish I'd done it that way. And you do the same for yourself. I was saying to somebody earlier in the week, I had the semi-final last year between London and Halifax, and it was a really hard game. It wasn't my best game, and when I reviewed it afterwards, I really wasn't happy with it. But there's been games this year by the same token that I've gone through and gone, yeah, that's really good. So if I'm there, I'm there, and if I'm not, I'll be there anyway to support what I would say my other team. The group of officials. So we'll see. But it's going to be a belter anyway. I mean, London have come on phenomenally in the last couple of years, and Halifax have always been there or thereabouts. So, there's potential for a new name to be on the trophy. But at the same time, Halifax have got as much right to win it as London have, haven't they?
Absolutely. It's always been a tough one to call when we've played each other this season. Challenge Cup final, league matches, everything. Yeah. It has been a tough one to call, but I'm going to ask you your opinions on these. Well, in fact, I'm not sure if we can actually. Just in case you're refereeing, that's probably not.
I've got my political answer lined up because I knew you'd ask me about this. So.
Oh, so you have a political answer?
Yeah.
Oh well, we'll go with it then. All these political answers go. It's just
the question is first then.
Well, the question would be, what would your prediction to be in the first match, Castleford or Rochdale?
Well, to go back to what we said earlier, I haven't seen a Championship West game this year, so I don't know. But I'm not going to call that. If it was, if both of the East teams had got through, I might have had more of an opinion on that. But as they haven't, I'll keep it to myself. Yeah. But now, I probably not wise for me to make a prediction on either of them. But they will be great games, and I'm probably looking forward to seeing how Rochdale go, having not seen them all year. And like I said earlier, they're always a benchmark. Know a lot of the people there really well as well. So I'll just sit there in what do Rochdale wear? White, but I find something neutral to sit and wear if I'm assuming I'm not referring.
Blue and red out, mainly blue with a bit of red on there. So what we'll do then with the other one, is there any kind of insight? This is how I did it with Tom a couple of weeks ago. With the London Halifax game, is there any kind of insight people should be looking out for? Anything special you might see?
Well, I think defensively, it will be a really strong contest. So I think neither team takes a backward step in defence, and there's some real big hitters in that side. So Mason Brillington is like a wrecking ball for London, and fortunately I've never had the pleasure to play against Halifax, but I don't fancy being on the end of Jack Brown at full tilt. So I think we'll see some big hits, and I think offensively as well. You've got Rob Hawkins, who is just unbelievably fast. He'll chase anything down, and get to that. And Joe Coyd's been really creative this year on the games that I've seen him in, and he doesn't miss a trick to score if he can, or set somebody up as well. So I think both sides are brimming with talent. Lewis King's just been named England captain as well, which is a huge honour for him, and obviously would be for anybody named captain of their country. Wayne's knocking about after all these years, still pulling out some great tricks, and Wayne's a great guy. Anyway, Wayne came to our first session at the Eagles to help us get going, and he always takes an interest. And I think Wayne's what you might call a man of the game. He'll obviously want Halifax to win and do. In fact, he'll absolutely want Halifax to win. And knowing Wayne as we all do, that will be his number one thing. But actually, if it's a really good game and the product is served up, I think he'd be happy with that once all was said and done. So so no predictions for me, Andy. I'm just let's see what happens, and if Friday comes and this has gone out and I am appointed to the game, then hopefully I've kept it the right way.
to be fair, I think both games are so hard to call. I wouldn't know how to call these two.
No.
But I think there's just going to be two massive games this weekend.
Yeah.
And if anybody can get there, they should definitely get there. They're going to be on Sky again.
Yes.
Massive.
Yeah. And that is really important to us, because people who wouldn't normally think about going to a game will see that, or they can dip into it. But the presentation that both Sky and the BBC put on for the showpiece games is phenomenal. You've got some great commentators that have taken the time to learn about our game, learn those insights, learn some of the nuances of our game as well. And I think whenever I watch the games back, it always comes across as really positive. You never have this sort of negativity sometimes that comes through in some facets of the game, or even in other sports. It's always positive, and I think that's because the guys that are doing the commentary are almost as in awe of the sport and as our players as some of us are as well. So it's just a great product. And do you know what I want to see in the future? I want to see video refereeing come in. I think that's the next major innovation for us.
I think where the sport's going, you can't not see it coming in. Obviously, there's a lot more TV footage now. Just to mention Sky, BBC, the sportsmen are putting them streaming on YouTube, which is fantastic as well. So there's much more that's going to get out there, more cameras that's going to be there. Why wouldn't there be? And especially a grand final, a World Cup and such.
Well, that's it. And I think the technology that's available now as well. I mean, we'll get, if you imagine what we have in the running game, from our perspective, we'll be into the other major innovation is some way of counting the number of Velcro hooks that are still attached to the tag, and something there. But I think that's the next big thing, and that would be really exciting then to work on that. And there's certainly been some tough calls in grand finals that I've been involved in and not involved in, where you've gone home and put it on your the biggest telly you've got in the house and tried to zoom in, and you still can't tell what it really would be. And I think if we could get to that point, then I think people would be even more amazed at some of the skill and the decision making that goes on from both players and the officials in some of those big games. So
it will be fantastic, and again, like I say, I think it'll come with growth, but we will see.
Yeah.
Right, Dave, it's been fantastic having you in.
Thank you.
And there's so much more you could always talk about. As soon as you have a guest in, there's so much you want to ask him, and you get stuck into a story, and it's fabulous. So we're going to have you back at some point.
After hours version.
After hours version, the late night like Ollie Oates used to do.
Yeah, I'll tell you the full story from.
Yeah, the full story from everywhere. Then you put your predictions in the late night one, and I'm sure when Tom's back with us as well, he'd like to come in and have a chat with you as well.
Yeah.
He like I say, he was gutted that he couldn't be in today after you've had been making friends over the last few months. All right. Right, thanks everybody for joining us for this episode of League on Wheels podcast. We will be at the grand final this weekend in Manchester, so if you do see us, come and say hello. We have some big news coming, well, it's big to us, big news coming out next week, so keep an eye on all our social media accounts, and please do share, like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I know it's so important to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll tell you why later, but please do get involved and have a chat with us all. Come and comment and like and share. Okay, guys, thank you very much. See you soon.